It would not have been a massive shock if someone told me before season 6 that Howard would end up being shot in the head by Lalo Salamanca. However, if someone told me that Howard would die at the hands of Pennywise the Clown, that would have been a different story. And the latter has actually come to pass, which is pretty amazing. You gotta hand it to the writers for constantly defying expectations. But in all seriousness, we have reached the midway point of Better Call Saul Season 6, our final adventure in the Gilganverse. In Episode 7, titled Plan and Execution, ends by placing the story at a point that many fans have been waiting to see it end up. The quirky comedic side of Better Call Saul dies with Howard Hamlin. Like the director says to Jimmy and Kim twice, you can't rush the process. And they didn't. It took 57 episodes, but this is now a cartel story, similar in nature to Breaking Bad. Every episode is now life and death. So I'm going to go through the pieces of dialogue and images I believe hinted towards this tonal transformation, and I also want to finish this video by discussing the larger message of the show and how it connects to Breaking Bad, because that was my greatest hope for Season 6. I wanted to see the moral of the story when you combine the two narratives, and I think one has been built, pending the final 6 episodes, of course. Now, when I saw the title of Episode 7, Plan and Execution, I had a sense of what was coming, and I'm sure many of you did as well. And the cold open with Lalo does a great job setting the table for the execution. To begin with, he's literally a sewer monster climbing in and out of the light, and when he prowls into Jimmy and Kim's apartment, the horror vibe continues on with the candle being blown, which was brilliant, terrifying stuff. We also get this shot while Lalo takes a shower, which to me looks like the barrel of a gun. Although I might be looking for it in hindsight, it's just an interesting image given what the future holds. I also enjoyed how they revisited the nocturnal aspect of Lalo. It adds to his borderline monstrous personality. To be a believable adversary for Gus Fring, you need to be unrelenting and ruthless, and this episode shows those traits in Lalo better than any other episode has. The timer that Lalo sets also feels like a timer for Kim and Jimmy. They made mistakes, and Kim bought them time at the end of Season 5, but the games are now over. Their life on the edge of criminality is finished. This man is going to drag them fully into it, kicking and screaming if necessary. It's a small moment, but an effective one. If the episode title and Lalo's introduction were not enough to shed light on the road ahead, we get a quick acting rehearsal from one of Jimmy's stars that begins with, I'm not afraid of death. What can death bring that I haven't faced? And then the monologue ends with, love? That's a trap. Love indeed ends up being a trap for Jimmy. He never wanted to seriously harm Howard. He went along with Kim's plot because he loves her and doesn't believe he deserves her. But these violent delights have violent ends, and Jimmy is forced to face those violent ends when Lalo reveals his pistol. Now, the big takeaway from the final stretch of the con is how passionate Kim is about its success. She tells Jimmy, this is where I need to be, when he suggests that she speed out to the big nonprofit lunch. She could care less about it, despite the mass amount of potential it has to help people. But she is desperate to run around and bark commands in a college park in order to ruin a decent man. Interesting character, Kim, and I'll get into that aspect of her in a second. When we get over to the iconic HHM meeting room, there is a very unique scene between Howard and an intern named Carrie. Despite feeling somewhat unnecessary at first, it's one of the defining moments of Plan and Execution. It's the archetypal Better Call Saul, mundane yet vital character moment. Carrie drops some ginger ale on the ground, and then Howard warns him, what happens when you open a fallen can of soda? It explodes. And the solution to the problem, a tip Howard learned from Chuck, is spinning the soda in a circle to utilize centrifugal force, which is a fictitious force. Physics is not my forte, but from what I can gather, it's the force that makes you feel like you're moving away from the center of a circle when you're on something like a fair ride. So how does that relate to the story? When Jimmy and Kim are trying to fix their con when things are on the verge of imploding, the camera moves in a circle around them. That could be a style choice, but I don't think so. Now, in relation to Chuck, I think he spun the can instinctually because of Jimmy. Howard says that Chuck told him he did it because it was his way of being prepared for anything, accidental or otherwise. Otherwise, I suspect, was Jimmy playing pranks on him when they were kids, and Chuck had to adapt. Howard, unfortunately, is not prepared for anything. He doesn't realize what Jimmy and Kim have done until it's too late. So the Goodmans were able to stop their can from exploding, temporarily, but Howard is unable to stop his. That's why he ends up being the chump before Lalo turns everybody into a loser. As Jimmy and Kim listen with glee to Howard's downfall, Jimmy has his pinky ring on, and Kim has her mother's stolen earrings on. The two objects acting as parallels to Walter's black pork pie hat. This is the second time Jimmy has humiliated a lawyer in front of his peers, Chuck being the first in chicanery, which is probably still the show's best episode, and Chuck is present in the room as his former protege is undone by his little brother. And true to precedent, once victory has been sealed, Kim and Jimmy go at each other. Confirming what Howard will say at the end of the episode, this is not about money, you two just get off on doing stuff like this. If this were season 2 or 3, the story would probably go on with Howard being a constant thorn in the side of Jimmy and Kim, but not with Lalo Salamanca in the picture. After making the most charismatic home video in history directed towards Eladio, he catches sight of a cockroach, which reminds him of Jimmy. Lalo describes Jimmy as a cucaracha in season 5 when Kim comes to visit him in prison, so pretty cool callback. Now, if there was one thing I'd change about the episode, I would have preferred Howard enter his resting place in a more magnanimous mood. My favorite line of the episode is when Carrie says, "I hope I'll be remembered like Chuck is, a great legal mind." And Howard responds with, "Maybe there are more important things." I thought that idea was going to stick with Howard. I thought he would greet Kim and Jimmy like a disappointed father who's embarrassed by the childish actions of his kids. But instead, he drunkenly takes them to task, which is satisfying, no doubt, but the more somber approach would have struck Kim and Jimmy harder. With that said, Howard's final monologue does tie into what I think the larger message of Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad is. Howard's speech could be called the justification speech, because that's the core line of questioning he throws at Kim and Jimmy. What do you two have to tell yourselves not to feel morally broken after selfishly harming an innocent man? Throughout season 6, we've seen many times what Kim says to herself. It's something like, to help the maximum number of disadvantaged people, we need to cut a few of the elites down. But at the end of episode 6, she abandons this line of thinking fully. She leaves behind the nonprofit to destroy Howard and doesn't have any second thoughts about the decision. It's common to see fans try to draw connections between Walter and Jimmy, but I believe it's easier to connect Walter and Kim. Both characters had a piece missing, to use Howard's words. And in order to find that missing piece, Kim and Walter made decisions that violated their ethical framework. So to survive this moral decay without completely collapsing, Walter said to himself, "I'm doing this for my family." Kim said, "I'm doing this for the weak." Psychologically, this is perfectly accurate. A vast majority of people who do terrible things don't say, "Evil be thou my good." They still need to feel like they're not just good people, but especially good people. So to keep that harmony intact, many individuals project their wickedness on those around them, and others take the route of Kim and Walter. Jimmy has a different problem. Jimmy was a troublemaker from a young age, and Chuck, because he wanted to be seen as morally superior to Jimmy, would always tell his younger brother that his bad behavior was never going to change. There's no chance for redemption, the best thing you can do is accept who you are. Chuck did this because Jimmy was favored by his mother, and he needed a monopoly on success and decency to feel superior to Jimmy. Now in Howard's speech, he tells Jimmy, "Chuck knew what you are," not understanding like we do that Chuck played a massive role in Jimmy becoming who he is. And when Chuck warned people about Jimmy, he wasn't doing that to look out for people. He wasn't doing that so other people could swerve away from his brother's immorality. He warned them so he could feel good about himself. You can trust me, I'm the righteous Chuck McGill, but Jimmy, stay away at all costs. I think Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad implore the audience to not just consider their actions, but the deeper motivations behind their actions. You can convince yourself you're doing something with good intentions, but deep down be driven by a personal flaw. If Chuck was able to recognize that he wanted Jimmy to be a screw-up, things could have been different. If Kim was able to recognize the selfish motivation behind her plot to crush Howard, things could have been different. What is it about yourself that needs to be confronted before things are too late? That is the question of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Walter White's arc is famously completed, and he's partially redeemed, when he finally admits to Skyler, "I did it for me." And it's a timely message given the many tools we have at our disposal to carefully craft a persona. There are a couple things that disappointed me in the first half of season 6. Lalo's journey back to Kim and Jimmy was a long one and slightly convoluted. Mike has been stagnant since episode 2. But the final 6 episodes have been set up beautifully. I'm most excited to figure out the fate of Lalo and Kim, but Walter, White, and Jesse Pinkman are returning. Can't forget about that, should be awesome. If you want to see these videos for the final 6 episodes in July and August, make sure to subscribe on your way out, and feel free to leave your thoughts on the episode down below. Thank you so much for stopping by, have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll talk to you soon.